If you want to add density and mass to your back, you need to do these 3 things. Number 1 is simple. Row, row, and row some more. Nothing adds slabs of mass and thickness to the back like rows. Number 2 is all about technique. You don't want to just move a weight from point A to point B. You actually want to row the weight. I'll break down the exact technique in this video. And number 3, don't skip on hip hinges. Rows primarily work the upper back with some secondary strengthening of the lower back, but hip hinges focus primarily on the posterior chain. That's the traps all the way down to the hamstrings, with the lower back and the lumbar being the main muscles targeted in this lift. For full back development, do not skip on those hip hinges. But first, let's dive more into rows. That's barbell rows, dumbbell rows, T-bar rows, or any other row variation that you personally prefer. Today, many guys will claim barbell rows are obsolete, but what they overlook is that being able to support a heavy load in a bent over position and rowing the weight in a controlled manner is not only going to build mass to the upper back, but strengthen and improve muscle mass across the entire back. Saying barbell row is obsolete compared to a chest supported row is similar to saying leg extensions are better for quads because they directly target them, and squats are worse because the lower back, glutes, and hamstrings are involved. Yet, we all know that set for set, rep for rep, a basic barbell squat is not only going to build bigger quads, but bigger legs in general than just a leg extension will. But like I always say, many of these arguments don't mean anything if intensity and technique are not on point. I don't care if you use a barbell row or a chest supported row. If you're not actually rowing the weight, you're not training the upper back properly. Most people get caught up in trying to handle too heavy of a weight to the point that they end up jerking the bar into position. The best way to describe this is similar to some type of shrug row hybrid. You see a lot of people who row heavy and they either sit too upright on a barbell row or guys lean back on a machine row. This does nothing other than train the traps ineffectively and cause you to use more weight than needed and put you at a greater risk for injury. I always like to point out, we have plenty of anecdotal evidence if we just look at guys who have gotten great results before us. And some of the best backs in bodybuilding have been built with not much more than 2 to 3 plates on a barbell row. With that said, ask yourself, how much weight do you really think you need? That doesn't mean go light, but use the appropriate load so that your technique doesn't suffer. And if you just love slapping heavy weight on the bar, don't worry. Hip hinges are going to be your stronger movement, and likely you'll load heavier weights on them. But again, I hear it all the time. Pete, an RDL, isn't that a glute movement, right? A stiff leg, isn't that a hamstring exercise, right? Yes, they can be, but any hip hinge movement that has a large range of motion is going to train the entire posterior chain. That's your hamstrings all the way up to the traps. Hip hinges will add thickness to the lower back, lats, upper back, and traps as much as they will the lower body. And if you want to fully maximize your back thickness, hip hinges and rows should be staples. I personally recommend these go anywhere in your training program, provided they're performed with quality reps. I've done them on back day, leg day, or even on their own day. Because the back is such a large muscle group, there's many different functions and many different movement patterns. You can't expect to attack all of them effectively and with a high quality of work in just one session. So it makes sense to have sessions where you focus on width, others on thickness, and even having separate sessions for hip hinges to fill in the rest. Apply these tips to your training now if your goal is more back thickness. And if you want the exact programs that I personally recommend to build muscle using proven old school bodybuilding methods, check out my old school mass gain programs down below. And as always, if you want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.